Hello, I'm Alex, and this is my Coursera assignment for week 5. Today I want to discuss about the two types of reverb, algorithmic and convolution. I do this in Logic Pro 9 where I will use Goldverb, which is an algorithmic reverb, and Space Designer, which is a convolution reverb. Algorithm reverbs are kind of like synthesizers in that we're creating the impression of a space with an algorithm of some sort, a mathematical representation. A convolution reverb is like a sampler, in that we've recorded the sound of a real space and we're applying that in the DAW. Both are really powerful for different reasons. The convolution reverb is going to sound more like a real space, cause it actually is a recording of a space, but like a sampler you're limited in the type of manipulations you can do it. The algorithmic reverb offers many more opportunities to manipulate the sound of the space, but it also won't sound quite as real because it's not a recording of a real space. We'll start by looking at an algorithmic reverb. And when creating an algorithmic reverb, usually they divide the room up into two separate components, the early reflections and the diffuse reverb. The early reflections are a set of short delays, and if we set this so that we're only hearing the early reverb, it almost sounds like a bunch of those slapback modules. I have a mix set up with all my tracks being routed to the reverb, and I'm soloing the reverb, so all we're hearing is the reverb of the mix. Let's hear this. So this is just the early reflections. If I bypass the plugin, we hear the mix. So a typical algorithmic reverb will consider those two portions of the sounds separate, and will give you different controls for the early reflections, and the diffused portion of the reverb. Let's look at the parameters you'll see on the early reflections. Typically, you'll often have a pre-delay, which delays the entire start of the reverb a little bit. We'll leave that at 10 milliseconds for now. Then, we often have some ways to manipulate the algorithm of the space. So we're going to change the location of all those early reflections. Now these parameters will often be called room size or room shape. It will often have stereo controls. This will depend on how the developer wanted to make the piece of software. But you have a lot of these similar kind of controls in the early reflection section. Let's try to manipulate some and hear the sound change. When I turn up the room size, it does sound like a series of those slapback delays, all at different levels, maybe in different delay times. Alright. The most important thing you're going to find here is going to be reverb time. This is going to be controlling kind of the size of the space you're in. And usually, you want to keep it below 2 seconds. A large, kind of, orchestral hall might have a 2 or 3 second reverb, but most of the music we're going to do is going to be in smaller rooms, that if you're trying to create the sound of a real space. For a special effect, a much longer reverb could work, but I think you'll find that a reverb time under 2 seconds is going to be useful in most cases. So again, all the different parameters in a reverb are really related to this artificial space that we're trying to manipulate. Algorithmic reverb worked pretty well for this mix, but I do want to try out the convolution reverb as well. With the convolution reverb, most of what you do is choose an impulse response. Impulse response is the recording of a real space that we are applying with this mathematical procedure called convolution. In most convolution plugins, you'll find a wide variety of audio files that are representing a large number of real spaces. I've chosen a space that represents a church. Let's hear how it sounds on the mix. Again, I'm going to just solo. Just the reverb. I think convolution reverbs can be incredibly creative as well as incredibly realistic. Thanks for watching my video about algorithmic and convolution reverb.